You'll never find someone better than me, my boyfriend bragged after cheating. Funny how my upgrade was standing next to him at the bar. He realized it when we kissed in front of him. I'm Claire, 27, female, and I can still hear his voice in my head when I close my eyes. You'll never find someone better than me. That was Derek, 29, male, my boyfriend of almost 3 years, spitting those words at me the same night I caught him cheating. He said it with this smug half smile, the kind that made my blood boil because it was so damn rehearsed, like he'd been saving it in his pocket for whenever I finally stopped ignoring the red flags. Derek was never shy about his ego. He thrived on it. When we met, it felt like confidence. He'd walk into a room and people noticed. He was quick with jokes, the guy who'd buy shots for strangers just to be the center of attention. And I'll admit it, back then, I ate it up. I was fresh out of college, still unsure of myself, and he made me feel like I was finally interesting enough to belong somewhere loud and glittering. But with Derek, everything was about winning. At first, it was playful, beating me at darts, one-upping stories, acting like our little competitions were foreplay. But slowly, I realized that he couldn't stand losing. If I told a story that got more laughs than his, he'd correct my details until the spotlight tilted back his way. If I cooked dinner, he'd brag about how his steak was juicier, his recipe better. Even in bed, he'd sulk if I didn't shower him with praise after. It wasn't all bad. He could be sweet when he wanted, grabbing my favorite candy on the way home or wrapping me up in those bear hugs that made me feel small in a way that felt safe, not belittling. But those moments started to feel rarer. What became constant were the digs disguised as jokes, the wandering eyes when we were out, and the creeping suspicion that he craved admiration from anyone but me. The night I found out he cheated, it wasn't a dramatic reveal. No lipstick on his collar, no secret text left open. It was dumber than that. We were at a bar with friends, and one of the girls, Lucy, who never had a filter, let it slip. She laughed too loud, clinked her glass, and said, "At least tell me she was hotter than Claire, otherwise what's even the point?" The world stopped. Derek's face froze, then cracked into that cocky grin like this was just another game he'd spin his way out of. He tried to joke, tried to minimize, and then when I didn't laugh, that's when he leaned in, breath hot with whiskey, and hissed, "You'll never find someone better than me." My chest tightened so hard it hurt, but my hands didn't shake. Not anymore. Because what Derek didn't know, what made my stomach flip with the sharpest, pettiest thrill, was that Better was already standing a few feet away. His name was Evan, 28, male. One of Derek's so-called friends, though Derek never treated him like one. Evan was quiet where Derek was loud, steady where Derek was volatile. We'd known each other for almost as long as I'd been with Derek, lingering on the edges of parties, trading small smiles across the noise. And that night at the bar, when Derek puffed up his chest like he owned me, I caught Evan's eyes, calm, sure, watching Derek unravel. That was the first time I realized Derek wasn't the only one who could deliver a show. When I think back on it, the thing with Evan didn't start the night at the bar. It started long before, quiet, almost invisible at first, in all the little moments Derek either didn't notice or didn't care to. Evan had always been in the orbit. He was Derek's friend, though that word feels too generous. Derek kept guys like Evan around because they made him look bigger. You know the type. Loudmouth who needs a quieter guy nearby just so he can dominate every conversation. If we were out, Derek would talk over Evan, steal his stories, even mock him for being boring, because he worked as a paramedic instead of chasing some flashy career. But I noticed things Derek didn't. Like how Evan always offered to walk me to my car if Derek disappeared drunk at a party. Or how he'd remember the dumb details, what brand of tea I liked, that I hated cilantro, that I was allergic to cheap earrings. Derek never remembered. He didn't need to. He thought remembering was for people beneath him. There was one night, months before I caught Derek cheating, that stuck in my head. Derek was plastered at some dive bar, arguing with the bartender about whether his signature drink should cost less because he was a regular. He was slurring, making a scene, embarrassing himself. I went outside for air, feeling that itchy mix of shame and exhaustion. Evan followed a few minutes later. He didn't say anything right away, just handed me his jacket because I was shivering. Then he said, in this quiet, steady way, "You know you don't have to stay." I laughed it off, brushed it away, told him Derek was just drunk. But my heart skipped because for one fleeting second, I let myself imagine it. Walking away? Still, I stayed. Because that's what I did back then. Derek had this grip on me, built on years of small cuts and bigger apologies. He knew how to break me down and then rebuild me just enough to keep me tethered. And I wanted to believe in the version of him who brought me flowers or cooked pancakes on lazy Sundays, even though that version was showing up less and less. So when Lucy dropped the cheating bomb at the bar, it wasn't just betrayal, it was liberation. Like the universe finally confirming what Evan had hinted all those months ago. I didn't have to stay. That night, though, Derek didn't see it that way. When he sneered about being the best I'd ever get, he wasn't just taunting me, he was daring me to prove him wrong. And I swear to God the timing was poetic, because Evan had been standing right there, nursing his beer, watching it all unfold. When Derek stormed off to the bathroom, muttering about me being dramatic, Evan slid into the empty seat beside me. He didn't touch me, didn't push, just said softly, "Are you okay?" And for the first time in years, I answered honestly, "No, but I will be." I didn't know it yet, but that was the first crack in Derek's empire of control. The first time I really believed I could burn it all down, and maybe even rise out of the ashes with someone better. Don't forget to subscribe. After that night, I thought Derek might back off. Maybe slink into silence, lick his wounds, try to charm me back the way he always had. But Derek didn't operate like that. Losing, even just the illusion of it, wasn't something he could stomach. Instead, he doubled down. For the first week after the bar, my phone blew up constantly. Calls at 2 a.m., slurred voicemails alternating between begging and rage. Texts like, "You're nothing without me. You'll regret throwing this away. I made you who you are." It was classic Derek, self-pity wrapped in arrogance. But this time, something shifted in me. Instead of crying in the bathroom, instead of scrambling to explain myself or smooth things over, I found myself laughing at the pathetic predictability of it. Every insult, every guilt trip, it all felt smaller than it ever had before. But Derek wasn't about to let go quietly. One night, a few of my friends came over for wine and takeout. We were sitting in my apartment, music low, laughing about something stupid. Suddenly, bang, 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 someone was pounding on my door. I knew before I even looked. Derek's voice, slurred and sharp, bled through the wood. "Claire, open the door. We need to talk. Now!" My friends froze. My heart raced, but not from fear, more from anger. I wasn't about to let him barge in and put on a show. I yelled through the door, told him to leave. He didn't. He kept pounding until my neighbor, this no-nonsense older woman, came out and threatened to call the cops. That's when Derek finally slunk off, cursing my name loud enough to wake half the building. And the next morning, he sent me flowers. A giant bouquet of red roses with a card that read, "Sorry about last night. You bring out the passion in me." I threw them straight into the dumpster. The more I pulled away, the more unhinged Derek became. He'd show up at my work pretending he just happened to be nearby. He'd comment on my Instagram posts from burner accounts when I blocked him. Once he left a note under my windshield wiper. "You can't erase me." It was obsession, plain and simple. And through all of it, Evan started quietly stepping into my life more. Not in a swooping fairy tale way. He wasn't Derek's opposite in some cliché sense. He was just steady. He checked in, not with constant pressure, but with a simple, "You good?" text. When Derek showed up outside my job one afternoon, shouting about how I was embarrassing him, it was Evan who happened to walk by, calm as stone, standing between us until Derek finally backed down. That was the first time I saw Derek's bravado crack. He spat on the ground, hissed something about traitors, and stormed off. But I caught the flicker in his eyes when he looked at Evan. That ugly little recognition. Derek realized in that moment that my so-called upgrade wasn't hypothetical anymore. He was standing right there, breathing, unshaken, while Derek was unraveling in the street like a tantrum-throwing child. And deep down, I knew Derek wasn't going to let that go. By the time Derek realized Evan wasn't just some background character in my life, the mask was gone. Whatever charming boyfriend act he'd been clinging to evaporated, and what was left was raw, unstable fury. It started with little things. Scratched messages into the paint of my car door, "slut" in jagged lines, Prank calls at night where he'd breathe into the phone and hang up. Childish crap, but laced with enough malice that my stomach twisted every time I stepped outside. Then it got darker. One evening, I came home to find my apartment door slightly ajar. Inside, nothing was stolen, but everything was off. My dresser drawers pulled out, photos of me and my friends scattered across the bed, one of them torn in half, Evan's face ripped clean out. On the bathroom mirror, written in my own lipstick, "Told you no one's better." I called the cops, filed a report, but what could they do? Derek hadn't technically harmed me, just trespassed, just left me terrified to sleep in my own bed. The officer shrugged, said they'd have a word with him. Like that was going to fix anything. When I told Evan, he didn't try to downplay it. He didn't tell me I was overreacting. He just listened, jaw tight, then quietly said, "He wants control. He doesn't get to win." I started staying over at Evan's place a few nights a week, not because I was ready to leap into something with him, but because it felt like the first space Derek hadn't tainted. Evan's apartment was small, cluttered with EMT textbooks and half-assembled furniture, but it felt safe in a way my own home didn't anymore. And Evan, he didn't push. He gave me the couch, made me tea, handed me his hoodie when I shivered. He was the anti-Derek. No performance, no theatrics, just quiet steadiness that held me together when I felt like I was unraveling. But Derek wasn't done. The breaking point came at another bar, ironically the same one where Lucy had spilled the truth about his cheating. I hadn't planned to see him there. God knows I'd been avoiding his haunts, but a mutual friend's birthday dragged me out. I figured he wouldn't show. I was wrong. Derek was already drunk when I walked in, slouched against the counter with his buddies. His eyes locked on me instantly, like a predator spotting prey. He smirked, swaggered over, and before I could back away, he leaned down and spat the words I'll never forget. "Told you, you'll never find better. You'll come crawling back." And that's when Evan appeared, sliding in next to me, hand brushing mine in this steady, grounding way. Derek's smirk faltered. He looked between us, confused at first, then enraged. "Him?" Derek barked, loud enough that the whole bar turned. "You're seriously trying to replace me with this boring little ambulance driver? You think he's better than me?" And that's when I snapped. I didn't plan it, didn't script it, but I turned, grabbed Evan's face and kissed him. Long, unflinching, right there in front of Derek and half the city. The silence after was deafening. Evan's hand slid instinctively to my waist, protective, steady. Derek's face twisted, the cocky veneer shattering into raw, unhinged rage. He shoved a stool so hard it clattered across the floor, glass breaking somewhere behind him. And in that split second, I realized something important. Derek wasn't just humiliated. He was dangerous. This wasn't the end. This was only the beginning of his spiral. Don't forget to subscribe. Update. Wow. I didn't expect my inbox to explode like that. Some of y'all had me crying, laughing. "Girl, you kissed him like hitting the self-destruct button on Derek's ego," might actually be the most accurate thing I've ever read. Others DM'd me, telling me to get a gun, a restraining order, a guard dog, and maybe an exorcist. Honestly, not sure which one I need most right now. So here's what happened after the bar. Derek completely lost it, like red-faced, veins popping, incoherent yelling. He was screaming about betrayal, calling Evan a snake, calling me every name in the book. Security tried to escort him out, but he fought them, literally fought them, knocking over a chair and trying to swing at Evan. It was chaos. People had their phones out. I know at least one video circulating because my coworker texted me the next morning, "Is this your ex going full WWE at O'Malley's?" Yep, that's him. They ended up tossing Derek outside and he stood on the sidewalk, pounding on the glass like something out of a horror movie until the cops finally showed. No arrests, of course, but they told him to go home or risk charges. He left, still shouting that I'd regret humiliating him. And here's the thing, I thought that would be it. Like his pride was shattered, he'd lick his wounds in silence. But Derek doesn't do silence. Since that night, it's been non-stop escalation. He's left voicemails alternating between sobbing apologies and screaming threats. He showed up at my job with flowers again, except this time they were dead roses. Black, wilted, like something out of a twisted wedding. The card said, You chose wrong. Even creepier, someone, wonder who, shoved a dead bird into my mailbox 2 days ago. I wish I was exaggerating. My neighbor found it before I did, thank God, but I still felt like I needed to bleach my whole apartment. And Evan's been a rock. He's furious on my behalf, but he's careful not to make this about him. He just keeps saying, he wants you scared. Don't let him win. But the truth? I am scared. Not of being alone anymore, but of what Derek will do now that he knows I'm not crawling back. A lot of you said the kiss was the ultimate revenge. Trust me, it was satisfying as hell. Watching Derek's face implode in real time? Chef's kiss. But it wasn't the revenge. Not yet. Because Derek's not the type to just fade out. And if he wants to play games, I'm ready to play back. So buckle up, Reddit. Because if Derek thought watching me kiss Evan was humiliating, he hasn't seen anything yet. After the bar incident, Derek was a storm without direction. Loud, destructive, desperate to remind me he still had power. But what he didn't realize was that every unhinged stunt he pulled just handed me more leverage. And that's when I started planning. See, Derek's entire identity revolved around image. He wasn't just a guy with an ego, he was a guy who needed people to believe he was the alpha, the winner, the one nobody could beat. He built his whole world on bragging rights. The car he couldn't quite afford but leased anyway, the curated Instagram full of gym selfies and inspirational quotes, the fake stories he told mutual friends about networking with investors. He lived for admiration. So what better revenge than tearing that image to shreds? It started small. I still had a box of Derek's old crap, hoodies, random books, and most importantly, a photo album he'd once begged me to make for his birthday. It was filled with pictures of us, tickets from concerts, dumb little mementos he insisted proved how perfect we were. I took it all, neatly packed, and delivered it to his apartment door with a note. Here's your history. Don't bother trying to rewrite mine. Then I went public. I didn't air out every detail, no need to look like I was spiraling, but I did make one carefully chosen post. A picture of me and Evan at a coffee shop, my hand on his, both of us laughing. Caption? Just one line. Turns out better isn't hard to find. Within an hour, Derek was blowing up my phone. Threats, sobbing, the works, but by then, other people were chiming in. Old friends liking the post, a couple of Derek's buddies dropping laughing emojis. One of the girls he'd cheated with DM'd me. Good for you, he's a nightmare. And then came the real masterpiece. Derek had always bragged about his network, the people who supposedly respected him, the connections he claimed to have in the city. But I knew the truth. Most of them tolerated him, rolled their eyes behind his back, but never said it outright. I didn't have to smear him. I just had to give people a reason to stop pretending. So the next time he showed up at my apartment building, screaming in the parking lot at midnight, I didn't argue, I didn't hide, I filmed it. Every slurred threat, every punch he threw at the air, every pathetic howl about me ruining his life. And then I shared it. Not on my page, no, smarter than that. I sent it to the group chat Derek had with his gym crew, to his professional network buddies, to Lucy, who I knew would blast it through her circle. Within 24 hours, Derek wasn't a legend anymore. He was a meme. When I ran into him the next week, he looked wrecked. Bloodshot eyes, twitchy hands, this aura of someone who'd lost control of the story. He tried to bark at me, but the bite was gone. People weren't laughing with him anymore. They were laughing at him. And yet, I knew Derek. He wasn't going to slink away quietly. He was going to snap. And when he did, I wanted to be ready, because the kiss at the bar, that was just a spark. What was coming next was fire. I should have known Derek wouldn't take humiliation lying down. The video did more than just bruise his ego. It annihilated the pedestal he'd built for himself. People stopped inviting him to things. His boys at the gym clowned him so hard he stopped showing up. Even at his job, bartending at one of the trendier spots downtown, customers had started whispering. He was unraveling, and when Derek unraveled, everyone else got dragged into the mess. The first real scare came 2 weeks later. I was leaving Evan's apartment early in the morning, hair still damp from a shower, hoodie borrowed from him when I noticed it, 4 slashed tires on my car. And on the hood, scratched deep into the paint. Better? I froze. My chest tightened, breath coming shallow. Evan came out moments later, saw my face, and then saw the car. His whole body went stiff, jaw working like he wanted to break something. But instead of exploding, he put a hand on my back and said quietly, "We'll handle this smart." We filed another police report, but again, no cameras, no witnesses, just alleged vandalism. The cop's tone made it sound like I was dramatic for even reporting it. Derek knew exactly how far he could push without crossing into a clean arrest. But he didn't stop there. A few nights later, I was woken up by banging on my apartment door. Furious, relentless pounding that rattled the hinges. I knew before I even checked the peephole. Derek. His face was wild, red, spit flying as he shouted, "You think you can embarrass me? You think you can make me a joke?" I didn't answer. My hands shook as I dialed 911. He kicked the door hard enough that the wood splintered near the lock. My neighbor yelled down the hall that the cops were coming, and that finally made him run. But not before he hissed loud enough for me to hear, "If I can't have you, nobody can." That was the line. That was when my fear stopped being theoretical. I wasn't just dealing with a bruised ego, I was dealing with someone who was spiraling into obsession. And that's when Evan stepped in, not just as the quiet protector, but as a partner. He sat me down and said, "You can't keep reacting to him. You need to end this on your terms." So I told him everything, every humiliation, every threat, every pathetic, "you'll never do better" speech Derek had shoved down my throat. Evan listened, steady and unflinching. Then he looked me dead in the eyes and said, "So let's prove him wrong. Loud enough the whole damn city hears it." The opportunity came faster than I expected. A mutual friend, well, more Derek's friend than mine, was throwing a birthday party at the same downtown bar Derek used to haunt. Word spread Derek would be there, probably desperate to prove he was still relevant. My first instinct was to avoid it, but then Evan squeezed my hand and said, "Or we make that the night he finally sees he lost." And in my gut, I knew he was right. Derek wanted a show? Fine. I'd give him one. But this time, it wouldn't be me on the defensive. This time, it would be the kill shot. Update 2. Okay. Deep breath. Y'all weren't kidding when you said this story felt like a movie. Except I'm living it. And it's gotten way more dangerous than I thought possible. First, thank you. Seriously. Some of the comments on my last post made me laugh so hard I cried. Whoever said Derek's main character energy collapsed into background extra energy, I want that stitched on a pillow. Others scared me straight with advice about restraining orders, cameras, safety plans. I've been listening. I'm not trying to be reckless here. That said, yeah, I'm about to be a little reckless. So here's where we're at. Derek's obsession has gone full Lifetime movie. Slashed tires, dead roses, screaming at my door like a banshee. I've filed reports, I've got neighbors watching out, but the cops are basically shrugging unless he actually kills me. Which, fun fact, isn't very comforting. But here's the thing. Derek thrives on control. He only feels powerful if I'm shrinking, hiding, scared. And the kiss with Evan at the bar? That rattled him harder than anything else. It was the one thing that made him look small in public, and he hated it. So what if I turn that humiliation up to 11? Here's the plan. There's a birthday party this weekend at one of the bars downtown. Derek is definitely going to be there. Our mutual friend already warned me he's been bragging about showing his face and reminding people who he is. Classic Derek chest puffing. I wasn't going to go. But Evan and I talked, and the more we thought about it, the more it made sense. Derek wants to prove he's untouchable? Fine. We'll show up. Together. Hand in hand. No more hiding. No more fear. Let him see in front of everyone that not only did I find better, I found it standing right next to him the whole damn time. Am I nervous? Absolutely. My stomach is a knot just thinking about it. But I'm also done playing defense. Derek's spent months making me feel trapped. It's time he learns what it feels like to lose the narrative. For good. Some of you told me to keep receipts, and trust me, I am. If Derek loses it again, there will be witnesses, cameras, the whole 9 yards. I'm not stupid. I know how dangerous unstable men can get when their ego collapses. But I'm also not letting him drag me through the dirt anymore. This weekend is it. The final act. Either Derek implodes once and for all, or he finally gets the message burned into his skull. Wish me luck, Reddit. Because when I tell you I'm ready to end this, I mean it. The night of the party felt like walking into the lion's den, but this time I wasn't prey. Evan and I showed up together, hand in hand, and for once, I wasn't hiding. I wore the red dress Derek used to hate. the one he claimed was too much, because he couldn't stand the thought of me drawing attention without him. Evan just smiled when he saw me in it, kissed my forehead and said, "Perfect." The bar was already packed. Music, laughter, bodies pressed tight. But I felt Derek before I saw him. That crackling tension, like static in the air. Sure enough, he was holding court at the far end of the bar, a drink in hand, trying too hard to laugh at something one of his buddies said. And then his eyes landed on me, on us. The shift was immediate. His fake grin collapsed, his whole body stiffened, jaw clenched, like he'd just been sucker punched. And when Evan leaned down, kissed my cheek, and whispered something that made me laugh, that was the kill shot. Derek's drink slammed down so hard it sloshed over the counter. He stormed toward us, shoving people out of the way. The music dulled, conversation stopped. Everyone could feel the collision coming. "You think this is funny?" Derek barked, pointing at us like he was on trial, and we were the evidence. "You think you can humiliate me again? You think he's better than me?" And I swear my voice came out steady as stone when I said, "Yes, Derek. He's better in every single way you never were." The crowd gasped, and Derek's face went crimson. He lunged, trying to shove Evan. But Evan didn't flinch. He just stepped between us, calm but unmovable, like a wall Derek could never climb. Derek swung anyway. Wild, sloppy, fueled by rage. The punch didn't land. Evan dodged, and Derek stumbled, crashing into a table. Glass shattered, drinks spilled, people shouted. Security rushed in, but not before Derek scrambled up, screaming, "She's mine! She'll always be mine!" That's when I pulled out my phone. I didn't scream, didn't argue. I just hit record, lifted the camera, and said loud enough for the whole bar to hear, "No, Derek, this is who you are, and everyone sees it now." And oh, they did. Dozens of eyes on him, phones out. His meltdown wasn't private anymore. It was public, undeniable, immortalized. He realized it too because his fury crumbled into desperation. He reached out toward me, eyes wild, begging, "Claire, please, don't do this. You know I love you, you'll never do better." And right then, Evan pulled me into a kiss. Slow, deliberate, in front of everyone. The bar erupted, cheers, whistles, the whole place buzzing with electricity. And Derek? He just stood there, shaking, looking like a man who'd finally lost everything. Security dragged him out, kicking and screaming while the crowd filmed. He was no longer the center of attention in the way he craved. He was a spectacle, a warning, a joke. And as I watched him vanish through the door, I felt it. The power shift. Derek's reign over my life was done. But deep down, I knew he wasn't finished. Guys like Derek don't fade quietly. There was still one last card he'd try to play. The fallout from that night spread faster than I could have imagined. By the next morning, Derek's meltdown was all over social media. People had posted clips from every angle. Him screaming, trying to swing at Evan, me recording, the kiss that sealed it. The captions were brutal. This guy really lost the plot over his ex. Somebody tell Derek this isn't the main stage at Coachella. When your girl upgrades and you downgrade into a meme. For once, I didn't feel humiliated. I felt free. The narrative wasn't mine to carry anymore. It was his, and it was a disaster. But like I said before, Derek wasn't the type to go quietly. 3 days later, he made his last desperate move. I came home from work to find my apartment door wide open. My stomach dropped. I knew before I stepped inside. He was sitting on my couch, pale, jittery, eyes bloodshot like he hadn't slept in days. "Claire?" he started, voice shaky. I just needed to talk, to explain. I stayed near the door, every muscle tense. "You broke in, again." He laughed, but it was hollow, cracked. "None of that matters. What matters is us, you and me. You know no one's better for you than me." There it was, the same line, the same poison, but this time it didn't land. Because while Derek was unraveling, Evan was already on his way. I texted him the second I saw the door. He showed up minutes later, bursting through like he'd been ready for this. Derek jumped up, shouting, trying to puff himself up, but Evan didn't play his game. He just stood there, calm, phone in hand, already dialing 911. "Leave," Evan said, "or stay here for the cops. Your choice." And Derek, broke. His face crumpled, tears spilling. He begged, on his knees, actually begged me to take him back. Promised he'd change. Promised he'd never hurt me again. The desperation was ugly, pitiful, but there was no part of me that wanted to save him anymore. So I gave him the only answer he'd never been able to process. I looked him dead in the eye and said, "You were right, Derek. I'll never find someone better than you because I already did." Evan slipped his arm around me then, steady and certain, and the timing couldn't have been crueler for Derek. Because right then the cops walked in. They saw him on his knees, saw me with Evan, and that was it. Game over. He tried to argue, tried to spin it, but they'd already seen enough. They cuffed him for trespassing and violating the warnings on file. The image of Derek being dragged out of my apartment, red-faced, sobbing, sputtering excuses, burned itself into my memory. Not as something scary anymore, but as the final nail in his coffin. In the weeks after, things shifted. Derek became a ghost story around town, the guy who lost everything because he couldn't handle being replaced. His job dropped him after customers kept mocking him. His friends stopped answering his calls. He wasn't feared, admired, or envied anymore. He was pitied, forgotten. And me? I finally breathed again. For the first time in years, I didn't wake up wondering if I was enough. I didn't second-guess my worth. Evan didn't save me. He just stood beside me while I reclaimed myself. Sometimes, late at night, I still hear Derek's words in my head. "You'll never find someone better than me." And I smile because the punchline writes itself. I already did. And he was standing next to you the whole damn time.